So next, exercise 4. So this one asks us to show that GCD of two elements in a Euclidean ring can be found in this way. So here what we have, we are given two elements. One of them of course has to be non-zero. By now we know that if both of them are zero, then GCD does not exist. So without loss of generality, we can assume that A is non-zero, say. Then you apply division, Euclidean algorithm with A and B like this. Say you get a non-zero remainder R1. Then its D value should be less than the D value of A. Then you continue this process by dividing A by R1. Okay. And say you get a non-zero remainder R2. Then you have this inequality also true. Continue the process like this. In every step you divide the divisor of the previous step by the remainder of the previous step. Now will it go on like this indefinitely? Looking at these inequalities, we see that the D values of the remainders are decreasing, strictly decreasing. So as long as we are getting non-zero remainders, this will continue to happen. But at the same time, we know that D values are non-negative integers. So this cannot go on indefinitely, because below a given non-negative integer, there are only finitely many non-negative integers. So at some point, these inequalities will stop working. That means we won't have any inequality. Because of that, we cannot have non-zero integer. After some stage, we must have a zero integer. For example, we have here, we are dividing Rn minus 1 by Rn and we have zero integer, because there is total division. Rn minus 1 is divisible by Rn. When that happens, we are being asked to show that the last non-zero remainder is a GCD. Okay, so let us see how the solution goes. So for definiteness, we have to name the Euclidean ring. Let R be a Euclidean ring and A and B are two elements in R such that A is non-zero. Okay. Now we make a claim. We claim that this greatest common divisor of A and B plus AX, where what is X? X is any element in R, is actually a greatest common divisor of A and B. It's a greatest common divisor of A and B plus AX, but at the same time it's also a greatest common divisor of A and B. And that too is true for every element X in R. That is, this is equal to the greatest common divisor of A, and I should not say B, A greatest common divisor for every X belonging to R. We are writing this separately. We start like this and then we say that is this. Does it not look unnecessary? We can just simply write like this. We can, but there is a possibility of getting confused here. This equation may make you think that we are saying that all GCDs of A and B which look like this are equal. Actually, that's not what it means, or at least that's not what we want to say. We are just saying that this is a greatest common divisor of A and B. The confusion that you have here, which may possibly arise, will arise from your tacit assumption that this is a single value. But we have already seen and we have mentioned that in a Euclidean ring there may be more than one GCDs of two given elements. So as such an expression or that notation does not represent a single value, it actually represents the set of all values. So what this equation is saying is that every such GCD, okay, any value of A and B plus AX's GCD you take, that will also belong to this set. Okay, that's what this equation is saying. Now anyway, so basically what we have to show here is that this is a GCD of A and B. Okay. Since A is non-zero, this exists, or I may write in the next line. Exists in R. It's coming from that result which says that GCD of two elements in a Euclidean ring exists if at least one of them is non-zero. So here we already have a non-zero, so there is no problem with existence of this. Okay. Now since this divides A and at the same time divides B plus AX, because by definition GCD of two elements divides both the elements. So we have it divides B plus AX minus AX. It is dividing this element, also this element, so it will divide such a combination of these two elements, which is nothing but B. Okay, so note that we now have the two divisibility relations. This thing is dividing A, also this thing is dividing B. Let C be some element in R such that C divides A and C divides B. C is a common divisor of A and B in the Euclidean ring. Then C divides A and C divides B plus AX, and this is coming from these two relations. Whatever X may be, that does not matter. X is some element in R, and hence since C divides both A and B plus AX, C will divide their greatest common divisor. So C divides this greatest common divisor. What do we have now? We have proved that this element is a common divisor of A and B. Also, any common divisor of A and B, which is C here, also divides this element. So by definition, this element is the greatest common divisor. That's what we were claiming. This proves and our claim is established. Okay, I can't wrap this off right now. I need this. Our claim is established. Okay, now with the help of this claim and these given equations, we will be able to prove this. Hence, from the given equations, we have, okay, this part I can clean. Greatest common divisor of A and B is equal to, note that in place of B, I mean we can replace B by B plus AX. So where X can be any ring element. So in place of X, what we do, we take minus Q naught, that is A comma B plus minus Q naught A. Okay, so this is also of the form B plus AX, where in place of X we have minus Q naught. But what is B minus Q naught A? It is nothing but R1. So this is equal to A comma R1, which can also be written as R1 comma A. Because GCD of two elements, the order does not matter. It's just GCD of two elements. And you continue the process. Now in place of A, you can write A minus Q1 R1. So this becomes R1 comma R2, and let us just write one more step, R2 comma R1, which is equal to R2 comma, in place of R1 we can write R1 minus Q2 R2. So this is R2 comma R3, and we continue like this. Ultimately, what shall we get? If we continue like this, we will get to a point where we have Rn minus 1 comma Rn. Okay. Now since Rn divides Rn minus 1, so Rn itself is a GCD of Rn and Rn minus 1. If you are confused about this last part of these equations, then you just go back to the definition of GCD, and in that definition you consider these two elements and also use the fact that Rn is dividing Rn minus 1. You will see that Rn itself is a GCD of Rn and Rn minus 1 in that case. So that's what we had to show. We had to prove that Rn is equal to A comma B. So that's how we can calculate the GCD. Okay, but one more thing is, what happens when n itself is so what I am trying to say is, what happens when R1 itself is 0? Note that Before we address that question, let us also write why we have finitely many equations here. Note that the given relations are finite in number. Because the d values of the remainders, we are using the word remainder in this context. You understand what we mean by remainders, these d values. Cannot decrease indefinitely. This is one thing, and the other thing is that if R1 is equal to 0, then D is equal to Q naught A, and the exercise asserts that GCD of A and B is A. Last non-zero remainder, if you are thinking of the process in this way and you view A itself also as a remainder, although A has not come from any previous step, but you can just simply treat it as a remainder. The way the pattern is going, in that pattern, if you want to include A, because we are after all dividing by A, so you can think of it as say R naught. Then the whole process, it says that R naught is the GCD of A and B. The exercise asserts this, and actually this is true, which is true. In bracket you can write since A divides B. So this is where the solution ends. Okay, now we go to the fifth one. Prove that if an ideal, okay, that thing. If an ideal U of a ring R contains a unit of R, then U is equal to R. We have used this in the proofs of some of the results in the text, but right now as an exercise we are going to solve this. Let U belonging to, or let U belong to U where U is a unit in R. Okay, then since capital U is an ideal, so if we multiply this element by a ring element, any ring element, that product will belong to capital U. So in particular, if we multiply u by its inverse, since u is a unit under multiplication, then that also belongs to u. Which implies u is equal to r. And in concluding this, we are using a previous exercise which we came across, I think, in the first set of exercises itself, that if R is a ring with unit elements, and oh no, not the first set of exercises, I think after introducing ideals we got that exercise which says that if R is a ring with unit element and U is an ideal of R which contains that unit element, then U has to be equal to R. So that's it. This is the solution. Then the sixth one. Yeah, this is the one which we have used in the solution of the first exercise. Prove that the units in a commutative ring are with unit element they form an abelian group. Under multiplication, okay, the author has not mentioned multiplication, we have to guess that. Let A denote the set of all units in R. Let me refill. Since 1 times 1 is equal to 1, where 1 is the unit element of R, 1 is a unit in R. Okay, so that means, or we can write, that is 1 belongs to A. So the set of units is a non-zero subset of the ring, at least it's a non-zero subset. Now let U and V be two elements in A, that means U and V are two units in R. Then UV, we are in a commutative ring, okay, UV okay, so now we have to prove that UV is also a unit in R. For that, we show that this product will be equal to the unit element. So using the fact that u and v are units, we can see that these inverses exist. Now using the ring laws that we have, that is multiplication is associative and multiplication here is commutative also, we have, then this is equal to, I am not writing it elaborately, that is v and v inverse will give us 1, then if you have that one with you, that gives you u, then u inverse becomes 1, and this is also equal to v inverse u inverse u v. Keep in mind that to show that an element is an inverse of some element, you have to check that both these products are equal to 1. In this case, we don't really need that because our ring is a commutative ring, but in general we need that. That is, uv is a unit in R, or uv belongs to A. Okay. Since u belongs to A, u inverse is equal to 1, which is equal to u inverse u. Okay. Now the same equations above also tell us that u is a multiplicative inverse of u inverse in R. That is, u inverse is also a unit, because you see, according to the definition of a unit is an element which has its multiplicative inverse also in the ring. Having a multiplicative inverse means this type of equation is true, this type of equations are true. So for u there is an element u inverse for which this is true, but for that particular element u inverse also, this is such an equation where u is playing the role of the inverse of u inverse. So that's why u inverse is also a unit in R, and as such it belongs to the set of units. Thus A is a group under multiplication. To see why A is a group, we need all these things. Okay, A first of all has to be a non-empty set, which we have got here itself. A must be closed under multiplication, that we have proved here. If u and v belong to A, then uv belongs to A. Okay, then multiplication should be associative, which is anyway true in the ring itself. So in particular, multiplication among the units is also an associative operation. If we restrict that operation on the set of units A, then also it's associative. Multiplicative identity should be there, which is there in the ring itself and which is also a unit, so it belongs to A, and every element must have a multiplicative inverse. So, or Wait. Do we really need to write this one? Yeah, we need, because I got confused. All the elements of A have already have the multiplicative inverses in the ring, but do those multiplicative inverses belong to A? To show that, we had to write this, because inverse of an element in A has to be in A, otherwise A will fail to form a group according to definition. So now we have all the pieces and we can say that A is a group under multiplication. Since multiplication is also commutative, because we are in a commutative ring, A is abelian. So the units in a commutative ring with unit element form an abelian group under multiplication. So that is exercise 6. Then comes exercise 7. Wherever there are GCDs, LCMs will also come, and exercise 7 is about that. Given two non-zero elements, A and B, in the Euclidean ring R, their least common multiple C belonging to R is an element such that both A and B divide C. So C, it's just, it's somewhat opposite of what we have in GCD. LCM is a common multiple, just like GCD is an element for which A and B are multiples of that GCD. Here just the opposite thing is true. Here the element C itself is a multiple of both A and B. So A and B must divide C. For these two divisibility relations to be meaningful, we want both A and B to be non-zero, and such that if A divides X and B divides X for some X belonging to R, then C also divides X. If such an element can be found, then we say that it's a least common multiple of A and B. Prove that. So that's the definition of LCM. Prove that in a Euclidean ring, any two non-zero elements have a least common multiple. In a Euclidean ring have a least common multiple, yes. So let us see the solution. So in the solution, what we do first, we consider a set of all expressions that can be formed from A and B by multiplying them by ring elements and adding such products. More specifically, we mean this. Consider the set A which is equal to, oh no, sorry, it's not the set of linear combinations of A and B. I got confused with that GCD thing. It is the set of all common multiples of A and B. Sorry about that. So this is the set such that A divides X and B also divides X. Okay. So this is a set in our Euclidean ring R.